Before men feared monsters, they feared the gods. In the age before time was measured by empires, before Rome carved its dominion into stone, there stood a mountain that whispered secrets only the old gods remembered. Mount Lycaon, Wolf Mountain, cradled in the highlands of Arcadia, where clouds forever clung to its broken crags, and olive trees bled red under the weight of unseen eyes. It was not a place of worship. It was a place of warning. There the sky was not blue but pale as ash. The wind did not sing. It murmured, faint, low, like the breath of something buried deep and dreaming. To the ancients it was sacred. To those who listened closer, it was cursed. This is not the werewolf myth you know. There is no infection, no silver bullets, no full moons. There is only a judgment and a sentence. Long before the word lycanthrope ever took root in mortal tongues, there was a man, a king, who defied Olympus itself. His sin was not madness, it was not hunger, it was hubris. King Lycaon of Arcadia, wise in politics, cunning in war, grew proud, too proud. He questioned the gods, doubted their judgment, and dared to test Zeus, king of the heavens. What follows is not merely a myth. It is a curse bound in blood and flesh, sealed by lightning and echoed through centuries of silence. And the gods, they do not forget. This is the story of Lycaon and how the first man became a wolf. Arcadia was fertile, its hills gold with wheat and green with laurel. But its king desired more than bounty. He desired reverence. King Lycaon ruled with a brilliance that made other rulers seem dim by comparison. His word built cities, his gaze cowed armies. To the people he was almost divine, and that was the problem. Lycaon began to wonder, what separates God from man? Power? Knowledge? Fear? If he could deceive the gods, if he could pass their judgment undetected, then perhaps, he reasoned, he was more than mortal. Perhaps he was their equal. So when the storm god Zeus came down, in the shape of a weary traveler, robe tattered, feet caked in dust, Lycaon did not kneel. He saw opportunity. He ordered a feast in the god's honor, but it was not meat from cattle or lamb that simmered in the fire pit that night. It was something far darker, something forbidden. He took the child of a servant, unmarked, nameless, and bled him upon the altar stone. He carved the flesh, dressed it in herbs, and set it before Zeus as a test. Lightning crackled outside the palace. The sky darkened, though it was noon. The smell of cooked meat mingled with storm-charged air. Zeus, of course, knew. He always knew. The moment his fingers touched the cursed dish, the illusion shattered. His form shed the guise of man and revealed the storm itself, glorious and terrible. His eyes blazed with sky fire. His voice cracked the heavens.
You defile the laws of hospitality. You spill innocent blood in mockery. You dare test me.
The ground split. The great feast table shattered like dry bark. Lycaon's sons, 50 in number, were incinerated where they stood, their screams devoured by flame. The palace buckled under divine wrath, collapsing in on itself as fire rained from the heavens. But Lycaon did not die. That would have been a mercy. No, his punishment was far worse. Flesh sloughed from bone, joints twisted and cracked, his mouth stretched into a muzzle. Not beast, not man, but a grotesque thing caught between. Zeus cursed him not only with the shape of a wolf, but with memory, awareness. Lycaon could no longer speak, but he remembered. Everything, the betrayal, the judgment, the scream of his sons as they burned. He would wander the wilds of Arcadia forever, unable to die, unable to repent, driven only by instinct and the unbearable weight of his guilt. And thus, the first lycanthrope was born, not through bite or blood, but through sin. The gods do not forget, and Lycaon, he could not. For years, centuries perhaps, he roamed the deep forests of Arcadia, no longer a king, no longer a man, a wolf in shape, but something far more terrible in presence. His eyes still held the weight of memory, of judgment, of loss. The villagers in the lowlands began to speak of him in hushed tones. The shadow of the mountain, the man-wolf, the watcher of Lycaon. Children were warned not to stray too close to the woods. Shepherds who climbed too high returned pale and mute, if they returned at all. And when the moon was high, some swore they could hear a howl not meant for mortal ears, a sound soaked in grief. twisted with rage. Lycaon became a ghost with fur and claws, a wraith of divine punishment. But as time passed, something strange began to happen. Not fear, not avoidance, worship. The mountain once cursed became sacred again, but not for the gods above. A secretive sect, descendants of old Arcadian blood, formed in the shadows. They called themselves the Sons of the Wild. To them, Lycaon was not a cursed king, but a god of transition, a being who had touched both mortal and divine, and survived. Their symbol was a spiral etched with teeth. They returned to Mount Lycaon, building hidden sanctuaries beneath the rock. They conducted rites under new moons, rituals of blood, of bone, of ecstatic trance. They did not fear the wolf. They called to him. At the heart of their belief was the ritual of Lycaea. Once every 9 years they would perform the ancient rite, an offering of animal and man. The chosen would consume a sliver of human flesh mixed in with the rest, and if the wolf within them answered the call, they would vanish into the woods for 9 years. If they returned human, they were purified. If not, they were never spoken of again. These were not rumors. The philosopher Plato himself alluded to such rites, a whisper of truth buried in academic parchment. But what these scholars could not know, what they dared not believe, was that Lycaon still lingered, not as spirit, not as myth, as something between. The mountain fed him, the sacrifices fed him. He grew stronger, not in body, but in presence, in the rustle of the trees, in the dreams of those who dared to walk the old paths. In the slow madness that crept into the hearts of the sons, some began to see him in visions, fur matted with ash, eyes gold and wet with fury. Some claimed he whispered in their sleep. Others disappeared entirely, their tents shredded, blood trailing up the mountain paths but never down. Even the priests began to fear what they had awakened, but still, the rites continued, because belief is a fire, and once it burns hot enough it will consume truth, doubt, and fear alike. Mount Lycaon, once the place where gods were born, had become a place where man became beast. And the bloodline of Lycaon? It had not ended, it had merely gone. Silent, curses do not fade, they linger, in blood, in stone, in dreams, waiting for the moment to rise again. In the modern age, the ruins of Mount Lycaon are little more than cracked marble and scattered dust, ancient debris visited by historians, hikers, and the occasional archaeologist. But beneath those broken columns and forgotten temples, something stirs. His name was Nicandros Themistocles, a scholar from Athens, a man of reason, of logic, of heritage. He did not know the true weight of his bloodline. His mother had warned him of the mountain, told stories of madness, of dreams that felt like memories, but he dismissed it all as old superstitions, folklore, dressed in myth, until he uncovered the crypt. It was beneath the collapsed altar of Zeus, sealed with stone etched in forgotten dialect. No record of it existed in archives, no mentions in scripture, as if the world itself had tried to erase it. But Nicandros opened it. Inside he found bones, not animal, not entirely human, and ancient scrolls wrapped in blackened leather. A fresco painted on the wall depicted a man, mid-transformation, face twisted in agony, teeth sprouting, like thorns from a flowering mouth, and in the center of the crypt, a chalice, bronze, stained dark with age, or blood. Its rim was carved with a single phrase, Opios yevete sipna, he who tastes awakens. Nicandros touched it, and that night the dreams began. He stood in forests, older than time, moonlight silver on furred hands. He saw temples burning, suns screaming, gods roaring with thunderous judgment. He was Lycaon, and he was not. Every morning he woke gasping, nails embedded in wood, feet coated in dirt though. He hadn't left his bed. He began hearing things, howls that came from inside his chest, not from the hills. He read the scrolls obsessively, translating by candlelight. They spoke of a legacy, a punishment carried not by the flesh, but by the blood. A curse passed down through the veins of Lycaon's descendants, dormant for centuries, waiting for blood to spill, waiting for pride to awaken it again. One night, Nicandros woke to find himself outside, naked, shaking, claw marks on his chest, not from attack, but from within. Cravings began soon after. Raw meat, the iron tang of blood, the hunger of the hunt, not just for food, but for submission, for dominion, for howling power. He tried to resist, but resistance only strengthened the beast. He became erratic, eyes ringed with shadow, temper flaring like lightning, and worst of all, he began to enjoy it. A letter was found, never sent, scrawled in a trembling hand. Something ancient stirs within me. It is not madness, it is memory. I am becoming what he was. The curse had awakened. Nicandros was not bitten, he was called. He was not the first, he would not be the last. The blood remembers. And now, the mountain calls. In the 9th year, the soul begins to split. The man does not die, he is simply eclipsed. Nicandros could no longer hold to the world of logic. Athens, his colleagues, the dig site, all faded behind the veil of instinct and ancestral fire. He no longer remembered what it felt like to be untouched by the pull of the moon, by the taste of wildness on the wind. The transformation was complete, not sudden, not theatrical, but cruel in its patience. Flesh hardened, teeth lengthened, eyes turned amber with memories not his own. He no longer dreamed, because he was the dream, or the nightmare, a vessel filled with something old and unrelenting. And as the 9th year neared its final moon, he was drawn to a mountain. He did not walk. He returned, like a stone returning to the riverbed where it was first broken. Mount Lycaon welcomed him. The wind was colder than it should have been. The trees bent slightly as if bowing. The stars did not twinkle here. They watched, and there, waiting in the shadows of the old altar, were the sons of the wild. They had never stopped. Through centuries of silence, they had kept the rites, whispered the chants, guarded the bloodlines. Return. Their eyes gleamed like feral coals, their bodies painted in ash and ochre. Nicandros did not speak. He did not need to. They knew the vessel had come home. The wolf of the gods was ready to rise again. Under a blood-red moon, the ritual began. The old words were spoken, not Greek, but older still. A language from when gods still walked the earth, a language that bled when spoken. Nicandros was brought to the stone table voluntarily. He lay upon it as a man. He would rise as something else. One of the priests approached with the chalice, the same one that had awakened him. He lifted it to Nicandros's lips. The descendant drank, and in that moment time broke.
I return.
The cult fell prostrate. The trees shook, and far across Arcadia, dogs whimpered and fled. The curse was never broken. It was merely sleeping. And now, the nightmare walked again. In the end, there is no end, only the echo of punishment. The gods do not forget, and they do not forgive. The tale of Lycaon did not die on parchment, nor did it end with Nicandros's howl on Mount Lycaon. It passed into shadow, into whispers, into blood. Those who walk the ancient trails of Arcadia still speak of figures in the mist, of clawed footprints appearing in dry soil, of growls that do not belong to any living beast. The cult, it is said, lives still, disguised in plain sight. Academics, politicians, even clerics who wear modern masks over ancient devotion. They await the next vessel. They prepare the next rite, because the curse is not linear, it is cyclical. As long as pride tempts men to defy the divine, as long as blood is spilled to awaken what sleeps, the wolf will rise again and again and again. You may forget the myth, you may laugh at the story, but somewhere on a crumbling altar drenched in moonlight, the chalice waits, and it only takes one sip. The final scene fades to present day. A lone archaeologist, American or perhaps European, climbs the side of Mount Lycaon, camera strapped to his chest, dust caking his boots. He speaks into a recorder. Day 12. Found an unlisted ruin north of the Zeus altar. Some kind of sealed tomb, it's not on any map. Going to check it out. The door. It's carved with something. Looks like an old dialect of Doric Greek. Might be a breakthrough. He wipes the sweat from his brow and sets down his pack. The wind whistles through the olive trees like a whisper. Opios gevete, xipna. He who tastes awakens. The story you know is only the beginning, because the curse of Lycaon was not meant to be broken. It was meant to endure. If you enjoyed this story and want more chilling legends and terrifying tales, make sure to like this video. It really helps us out. You can also click on our Ultimate Werewolf playlist to watch more horror and cryptid stories. The link is in the description below. And if you love horror, folklore, and unexplained mysteries, subscribe to the channel and join our growing community of fear seekers. But don't stop there. Turn on notifications by clicking the bell icon so you never miss a new story. Because in the world of horror, the scariest things happen when you least expect them. And trust me, you don't want to be left in the dark. Welcome to the darkness.